The Westward Eye is a gothic horror audio drama. Mature themes and gore are present. Listener discretion is advised. Episode-specific trigger warnings can be found in the description. Thank you. Somewhere that may have existed long ago, or perhaps is still to come, lies a place isolated from the rest of civilization, known as the West, where lost communities perform ancient traditions, old gods pry themselves from the earth, and monstrous creatures lurk in the darkness. The sun was beginning to lower itself in the westward sky when Sterling's eyes finally cracked open. The heat of the day had seeped its way in through the single-paned window. Consequently, the comforter that had once wrapped around Sterling now rested on the floor. Looking over, Sterling found their companions to still be fast asleep on the ancient mattress beside them. Etta laid on her side, peacefully hugging a pillow to her chest, while Tobin, on the other hand, seemed to have taken up the majority of the bed, flat on his back, limbs sprawled in every direction. One of his legs was wrapped around Etta's torso, and his right arm draped over Sterling's chest. Sterling chuckled to himself at the sight. Moving as gently as they could, they slowly peeled Tobin's arm off their chest and inched their way off the bed. Sterling stood in front of the window for a moment, scanning the desert for any signs of life. Upon not seeing any, they turned and walked out of the room, leaving their companions to catch up on their much-needed sleep. Sterling stretched their arms high above their head as they descended the narrow staircase and into the living room. There, they collapsed on the sofa and pulled Ma's journal out from their jacket. Sterling flipped to the last page that they'd bookmarked and read quietly to themselves, their Ma's voice echoing in their mind.
The nights have been getting colder. I fear a freeze is on the horizon. Sterling and I have been at this cottage for a little under a month now. It's nice. A good place to rest and regroup after.
Sterling noted that their Ma had scribbled something out at the end of the paragraph. Deep lines of ink textured the paper.
I've nearly exhausted all of my leads for ways to get out to the east. I don't know what kind of life waits for us there, but anything has to be better than this. Sterling is too young to know, and I hope we'll be able to get to the east before any of the memories of this place sticks with them. They're too sweet. No one deserves to see what they've seen. As they sleep, I find myself thinking back to Winnie. I pray she stopped looking for us. My heart is broken into pieces thinking about the way we left things. Even so, I don't regret it. My priority is my child. There's one more lead that I intend to follow tomorrow. I have to hold out hope for myself and for Sterling.
Winnie stuck out in Sterling's mind. Although their Ma had never mentioned the name, it appeared often throughout the journal.
What else did you hide from me, Ma?
Sterling flipped through the journal. To their surprise, the next few pages appeared to have been sloppily ripped out, leaving thin strips of jagged paper behind. Confused, Sterling ran their fingers across the ripped pages.
Where did she...
Sterling.
Sterling closed their mom's journal and turned to see their companion slowly walking down the stairs. Once reaching the bottom, Tobin raised his hands to its face, rubbing the sleep from his eyes.
How long have you been awake?
Not long. 20 minutes at most. How did you sleep?
Well, thank you.
Etta and Tobin moved sluggishly through the living room and sat next to Sterling on the large couch.
So, listen. Etta and I wanted to talk about what happened, but we really didn't want to do it without you.
Alright. What's going on?
I don't think that it's a jump to say that the West hasn't really been anything close to what Etta and I expected before coming here.
Well, what did you expect?
None of the books in the university's archives mentioned anything about monsters or witchcraft. I mean, they were vague, yes, but most just talked about how the West used to be. How it was a resource-rich area with so much to offer. Most of the archived books were journals, discussing the splendor of materials and ore underground, the beauty of the landscape and the fulfillment that came from making a difference in a small community.
But we've been out here for 2 days and have almost died 3 times.
Etta slowly raised her left hand to her bandaged arm as she spoke, gently stroking the gauze around her wrist.
Though, Tobin and I also don't know if going back east would be much safer now.
We broke a good 10 laws to get out here, and we know that. Etta and I have hope that LockCorp will grant us immunity, but we really need to deliver to make it happen. I mean, let's be real, 3 days out west, that's just not going to cut it.
So what are you saying?
Well, we're just trying to weigh out our options.
Stay or go. I want nothing less than to go back to the east. 40 years of repay work at LockCorp honestly sounds like hell, but it's the price I had to pay to go through university, and I'm happy for the education that it granted me. I'm just saying that I don't want my fear of going back to be the deciding factor. You and Etta are my partners, and this expedition, it would be selfish to make the decision without your input.
Surprisingly astute, Tobin.
You really don't give him enough credit.
Etta shifted her soft gaze between Sterling and Tobin.
For what it's worth, I don't want to go back either. Not yet, anyway. Being out here has been scary, and honestly just horrible. But I know that our work is going to pay off. And when we do go back east, I want it to be when we've accomplished something big.
Etta and Tobin expectantly turned their gaze to Sterling.
I'm with y'all. The West is terrifying, but I'd take it any day over the capitalist hellhole of the East.
But we'll still go back. Eventually.
Yeah. After we have enough to guarantee that we won't need to work another day of our lives.
Right. We'll stay out here for however long. And when we eventually get enough for a good exposure, then we can head back.
That sounds alright.
So we're in agreement.
Sterling settled into the couch as Etta pulled out her notebook and began writing. As time passed, she'd ever so often break the comfortable silence with a question for Sterling or Tobin. By the time the sun had begun to dip below the horizon, Etta had filled more of her journal pages than Sterling cared to count.
So, what exactly happened when you went back into the schoolhouse?
Etta stopped writing and raised her attention to Sterling.
I didn't do anything.
Well, then what did you go in there hoping to do? We saw Weimer and the kids in the window. So...
I don't know. I was angry at Weimer and confused. But then when I saw him, he wasn't scared of me. At least he wasn't until I threatened the students. I I've never seen a man shatter so quickly. He begged, said if I were in his shoes, I would have done the same.
What a psycho.
He wasn't wrong.
How so?
I understand where he's coming from.
Sterling slouched into the couch, allowing their posture to cave under the intensity of their own emotions. But as they looked into the faces of their companions, as they saw Tobin and Etta's genuine concern, they took a deep breath and continued.
I lost my dad before Ma and I made it across the wall. It happened when I was so young. I can't remember his face anymore, so it shouldn't still hurt this much. But when Weimer talked about the pain of losing his kids, I understood.
Sterling.
Ma didn't talk about him much after we crossed over, and by the time I was old enough to start asking questions, she stopped speaking about him entirely. I think she wanted to spare me from the pain she was in. If I can't remember him, I can't miss him, right?
That loss is still there.
Oh, I know it. This cottage is the first place we settled down after losing him. It was safe, but also so empty. Ma did her best to keep things light. She read to me a lot.
Sterling looked towards the large bookshelf in the corner of the room, its dark wooden shelves sagging ever so slightly under the weight of countless books.
She thought that escaping to a fantasy world would somehow make this one seem less scary. I don't know. I'm still piecing it all together.
I wouldn't have pegged you as a fan of reading.
Really? No, I loved books. Thrilling adventures, daring escapes, whole worlds that only existed in the bindings between two leather covers.
Do you still read often?
No. Ma said the books here would just weigh us down. I'd tried to argue with her, but she'd insisted that they still had a job to do here, whatever that means. We had some Eastern literature, but all the stories felt superficial.
Tobin stood and slowly crossed the living room, his footsteps causing small puffs of dust to rise from the worn rugs. He moved towards the sagging bookshelf and began scanning its contents.
Out of all the books, which one's your favorite?
Why?
You've spent the past 4 days, for lack of better phrasing, taking care of Etta and I. It's time that we return the favor.
You don't have to do that.
Don't think I forgot about how you carried me back to camp after our encounter with the woman in the arroyo. This is only fair.
Tobin shot Sterling a smile and turned to face the bookshelf, his fingers gently grazing over the antique novels.
All right, let's see here. The Adventures of Douglas Jones, Ranch Follies, The Eagle House. Oh, come on, Sterling, are you really going to make me read all of these out loud?
You know he will.
Etta playfully leaned on Sterling's shoulder, quickly pulling back as she noted their discomfort with the affectionate touch.
It's best to just humor him.
I heard that.
I was hoping you would.
Tobin rolled his eyes as he continued to rifle through the stacks upon stacks of novels. Sterling decided to heed Etta's advice.
It was The Cry of the Cactus Wren. Just a silly little picture book about a bird who lives in a riverbed. It starts with little adventures each chapter and then devolves into politics and war, but they're still birds. Now that I think about it, it's all kind of depressing.
Found it!
Tobin's hands wrapped around the thick-bound book and pulled it from the shelf. Tobin turned the book in his hand and wiped the light blue cover free from the dry dust that clung to its sturdy canvas. On the front of the novel, under the golden title, was a simple watercolor of a bird. Its brown feathers contrasted the blue cover nicely, making the bird appear as though it flew through an open sky. He handled the book with care as he moved back towards the couch to sit by Sterling and place the novel on their lap. Sterling reached down and pulled The Cry of the Cactus Wren from Tobin's hands, careful not to harm its delicate form.
Do you want us to read it together? We can do fun voices!
I shudder at the thought of you trying to do a Western accent.
Their words, although sounding like a joke, flowed forth from quivering lips. Sterling's eyes remained fixed on the novel, growing misty as they gazed at its cover.
We can give you some space.
Etta stood and flashed Tobin a look.
Tobin and I can start a fire and cook up some rations for dinner before the sun completely sets. Is that all right?
Without looking up from The Cry of the Cactus Wren, Sterling nodded. In response, Etta simply rounded the couch and offered her unbandaged hand out to Tobin. Gently, he placed his hand in hers. With a soft pull, Etta helped Tobin to his feet, and the two exited through the cottage's back door. In the time that followed, Etta and Tobin did their best to give Sterling their space. They kept as quiet as they could while carrying out various odd jobs around the house. Etta found old pots from the kitchen and handed them off to Tobin to collect water from the yard's well. In the meantime, she searched outside for dry brush to start a fire. The longer the two worked, the more Tobin had expected to feel an itching boredom at the lack of action in this place. Rather, he seemed to find himself relieved by the small amount of domesticity provided in this simple cottage. He and Etta no longer had to watch for treachery, hide from creatures, and most of all, watch school children. Just beside the cottage, a group of uneven stones circled round to make a fire pit. Etta crouched beside it, meticulously placing dry brush in its center. Her face reflected a deep concentration that caused her face to scrunch up. Tobin snorted at her expression.
Struggling, are we?
What? No. I'm just getting it ready, that's all. Fine. I'm stalling to see if Sterling will come out and help.
Tobin knelt next to Etta and quickly set the small fire pit ablaze.
There we are.
The brush caught flame quickly, surprising Tobin with its instant warmth. With a grin of satisfaction, he turned from the fire and began heading to the cottage to grab their dried rations from his pack. Tobin barely made it 3 steps towards the back door before he saw a deflated figure standing in the doorway.
Sterling?
Sterling stood in the doorway, their body's weight leaning hard into its frame. They stared absently at the red earth before them, and their hat dipped down just low enough to shield their eyes from Etta and Tobin's watchful look. Suddenly, their knees began to tremble and buckle.
Sterling? Goodness, what happened?
Etta rushed past Tobin and ran to the porch, stopping directly in front of their companion. Upon sensing her presence, Sterling crumpled to the floor in a fit of sobs. Within seconds, Tobin joined the pair on the dusty ground and sat close beside Sterling. He instinctively longed to pull his crying friend close into an embrace, to rub circles in their back or hold their hands, as Etta had done so many times for him. Yet, knowing his friend, Tobin kept his distance to offer a sense of comfort Sterling would actually accept.
Hey,
Hey, it's okay. You're all right.
Take all the time you need. When you're ready to talk, we're here to listen.
Sterling sobbed harder. They clutched the blue book to their chest, its corner peeking out from underneath their jacket. With every passing moment, Tobin became less eager for Sterling to respond. Rather, he and Etta settled next to their companion, offering their company rather than conversation as the sun disappeared. It was only when the darkness of night washed over the cottage that Sterling's breath finally steadied. The fire crackled a few yards away. Sterling's shoulders rose and fell softly as their eyes tilted up to gaze into the flames. After a moment, Sterling's posture straightened. Turning to Etta, they handed her the tear-stained novel. Graciously, Etta accepted the book and opened to the first page. As she did so, a folded piece of paper tumbled into her lap. Her attention shifted from the letter to Sterling.
Can you read it?
Are you sure?
Yes. I can't bear it alone.
Etta unfolded the piece of paper, careful not to rip any of its fragile creases. Its left side was jagged, as if it were ripped out of somewhere else. She turned her attention to its faded writing and began to read aloud.
To my love. I've tried to write this letter more times than I'd like to admit. It's been over a month since we lost you, and despite my hopes, things have only gotten harder. Therefore, I figured it would be best to get some kind of closure. This letter is that closure.
It's me saying goodbye. When Sterling and I came across this cottage, I could feel your presence. I feel it in the calm hours just before dawn, in the glowing of the lightning bugs, in the smile of our child. I know that you're not gone. Not completely, anyway. But it's unfair for me to hold on to your memory so tightly. I worry that the knowledge that you're here, that some part of your spirit remains in the desert, I fear that it has the potential to stop Sterling and I from crossing over to the east. But you know better than anyone why that can't happen. Sterling and I need to escape this place, and I'm sorry to say that it means leaving the memory of you as well. It would only weigh us down. It's scary to think about starting this new life without you. It was always our goal, our dream. Each night as I go to bed, I dread waking up without you by my side. Even so, I know that I have to be brave for our child. We understood the risks, what it would take to give them a shot at a safe life. I decided to keep this letter to you in Sterling's favorite book. I wish you could see them. They remind me a lot of you. They ask me where you went less as the days go by. I hate to admit that I still don't have the heart to tell them the truth. Robert, my love,
My everything.
my
My
moon,
moon and my
stars.
stars.
I
I miss you dearly. Goodbye.
As Etta read the letter, Sterling's eyes began once again to well up with tears. As they sat, listening to their friend's soft voice, Sterling allowed their emotions to overtake them. The intensity of loss and anger and fear boiled up from somewhere deep inside of them and pulled them further into a state that Sterling had long been avoiding. A memory, bursting forth as if it were a river after the first rain of spring, flooded Sterling's mind, pulling them back to the moment they last saw their father. Blood gushed from Sterling's nose as they were dragged into the darkness. The maw of the creature that in another time might have been a javelina gripped tightly around their ankle. Its warped fangs dug deep into Sterling's flesh, making the sting of their broken nose little more than a discomfort compared to the scorching pain of their leg. Sterling did their best to avoid looking at the creature. Rather, they focused their attention at the small fire off in the distance. At their parents. Sterling's maw and paw stood next to the fire pit, yelling things that Sterling couldn't quite hear as the two helplessly watched their child dragged deeper into the darkness. The warped noise erupting from their captor's mouth pulled Sterling's attention away from their parents. The creature snorted and bared its teeth deeper into the child's leg. Even in near darkness, Sterling could tell this creature wasn't ever meant to walk the earth. Its body was twisted and fleshy, with gnarled teeth protruding from places where they should have never grown. It was covered in deep scabs, leaking dark blood and pus that dripped onto the dry sand. Whatever it was hadn't started out this way. Some divine monster had slipped a little bit of its darkness into the creature's flesh, a little bit of its power. Similar monsters called out from the night, echoing the sound of death and pain. Sterling could hear the creatures moving just out of sight, circling them as they continued to be yanked across the dry earth. Sterling felt bile rise up in their throat, and their eyes grew blurry with fear. The physical sensations, the pain of their current state, began to numb the reality around them so much that Sterling was unable to hear the footsteps running toward them from the campfire. The space in between the creature's cloudy eyes erupted with a burst of gore, sending splatters of thick blood flying across Sterling's face. The monster's jaw slacked, releasing Sterling from its grasp. Its body swayed, dead before it hit the earth. Before Sterling could process what was happening, they felt two strong hands grip under their arms. The hands gently pulled Sterling into a standing position. Their ankle pulsated under them, still gushing out streams of blood. Turning their attention up from their ankle, Sterling looked into their father's eyes, the color of morning mist when it rolled down from the mountains. He wore dusty blue jeans and a dark green button-up. Robert lifted his hands and cupped Sterling's face, wiping away bitter tears. Sterling's gaze shifted towards the creatures now circling them. Their large bodies shifted in the night, blocking out the stars.
Hey, kiddo. I'm gonna need you to listen to me, okay?
Sterling tried to bury their face in their father's chest, convulsing with sobs. Holding their face firm, Robert stopped them, bringing their attention back to his own.
Sterling, darling, I need you to look at me, okay? I know this is scary, but you're gonna have to be brave for me, just for a little bit. Then you can let all your big feelings out.
Sterling gave a small nod.
Good. Now, do you see the campfire in the distance where Ma's standing?
Sterling nodded once more. As they did so, they noticed the creatures had begun to move closer. The stench of their mangled bodies caused Sterling's nose to burn. At the sight of the creature, Sterling let out a small yelp and jumped back into their father's arms.
Hey, it's okay, darling. You're gonna be alright. I won't let them hurt you, okay? Now I'm gonna count down. When I get to 0, I need you to run, alright?
Robert didn't wait for his child to answer.
Alright. 3, 2, 1, go! Sterling, run!
Sterling felt their father's hands release from their arms for the last time, pushing them toward the fire. Within an instant, they were running. Robert's screams echoing through the
Sterling, don't
darkness
stop!
as their aching feet collided with the earth.
Oh my god, darling.
Sterling's memory began to fade as they neared the warm glow of the fire and the even warmer glow of their mother's face. The screams of their father faded behind them as Sterling was pulled from their reminiscence and back to the dusty cottage, to the splintering porch, to Tobin and Etta.
Hey, it's okay. We're right here.
The weight of Sterling's long-forgotten memory bore down on them. Their father, Robert, his terrified face, for better or for worse, was now scorched into Sterling's mind. Every few minutes or so, Sterling tried to speak up, to tell their companions just why they recognized the mangled man from the night prior. But every time they did so, a burst of sobs erupted from their chest, shutting down any possibility of comprehensible speech. They sat on the porch, next to Etta, as Tobin piled more logs into the fire pit and finally began to cook their rations. The smell of rehydrated chili wafted up from the small pot above the flame, causing Sterling's stomach to scream out with hunger.
How much do you want to bet he's burning it?
I'd say there's a 50-50 chance.
At least.
I didn't know when the right time to bring this up was, but I won't put anything of what happened today in my journal. I feel it's too personal.
It's fine, really. You can't have a full story if you're picking and choosing what goes in. Besides, it's important. He was important.
Etta smiled and nodded, before turning her attention back to the fire pit, where Tobin had seemed to have completely abandoned stirring their dinner.
I should go help him.
Yeah,
Are you going to be alright here?
it's alright. I'll join you by the fire.
Are you sure?
Kindly, at this point, I'm more hungry and tired than anything else. Making sure he doesn't ruin dinner is now my #1 priority.
Fair enough.
Etta stood and outstretched her good hand to Sterling. Reluctantly, they placed their hand in hers and allowed for Etta to pull them to a standing position. Slowly, the two walked to the fire pit, where Tobin had all but neglected to stir the boiling pot of stew dangling above the flames. Etta lowered herself into a crouched position, taking on the responsibility of chef. Tobin half-heartedly tried to grab the spoon away from her, but it was strikingly apparent that his gesture was all for show.
Thank you, Etta. My hand was getting rather tired.
Of course. It looked like you were struggling quite a bit.
Oh, are you all right, Sterling?
I will be.
Sterling turned their gaze away from the flames and out towards the endless expanse of desert. The light of the waning moon offered little assistance to their clarity as they scanned the scenery. Tobin, following Sterling's line of sight, also began to look into the darkness.
Do you see something out there?
No, I'm just taking it all in. It's beautiful, isn't it?
You know, every time it's gotten dark out here, something terrible has happened.
This place is safe.
You keep saying that.
Doesn't make it less true. Do y'all remember the man we saw last night?
Oh, yeah, with the terrifying and disgusting face. Yes, how could we forget?
He used to be a good man. Some part of him, at least. I don't think he's him anymore, if that makes sense. But that goodness is still there. He won't let anything happen to us.
I have a hard time believing that.
I do agree with you to an extent, Sterling. The West is beautiful. But Tobin does have a point. When it gets dark, nothing good seems to happen out here.
Sterling closed their eyes, thinking back to the fragmented pieces of their childhood. As they reflected on their time with their mother and the familiar scene before them, a hazy memory took shape in their mind.
I have an idea.
Before their companions could contest, Sterling began walking into the darkness.
Sterling?
Whoa, hey, what are you doing?
Trust me.
Is this from another one of your dreams?
Sterling made their way further into the darkness.
Honestly, I don't know. Here.
Sterling stopped directly in front of a large bush of dried brush. To Etta and Tobin, they were little more than a formless shape in the onyx haze of night.
What are you looking at?
You should just come back.
Etta and Tobin watched as Sterling crouched next to the large bush. Slowly, they extended out their arms and reached into the mass of dry, gnarled sticks. From the light of the fire, Tobin watched as Sterling grabbed something in the middle of the bush and, after a moment, began to shake it. The bush swayed, small twigs cracking off from the abrupt movement. Tobin half expected a creature to emerge, some long-forgotten monster that spent its life in the enclosure of the brush. But as Tobin looked at the bush in front of Sterling, he noticed a small glow, soft at first. The yellow light grew in intensity until the bush itself looked as though it were on fire. Sterling stepped away from it and began walking back towards their companions, seemingly unfazed by the pulsating light behind them. By the time Sterling reached their companions, the bush's light more than rivaled that from their fire pit.
Sterling?
Just wait.
Sterling took a seat and patted the ground next to them, prompting Tobin and Etta to follow suit. As they did so, the light from the bush was blinding, illuminating the desert nearly as bright as the morning sun. Tobin opened his mouth to say something, anything. But as he looked at Sterling, their teeth showing in a soft smile, Tobin bit his tongue and decided to simply trust them. Just as Tobin turned back to the bush, the burst of light within it floated upwards and began to radiate out. The mass shifted and expanded through the air before separating into thousands of tiny dots. The warmth of their light seemed to fill Tobin's very soul, expelling all feelings of anxiety and fear. The gleaming specks were breathtaking. They twisted and flowed with the gentle night breeze, their shapes morphin' and dancing. The dots fluttered elegantly, moving their way higher into the sky.
Wow.
Lightning bugs. They're not here often, just in the late springtime.
They're magnificent.
Paul was the first to find them. We were walking at night and he bumped into a bush and there they were. They were so beautiful. And after that night, every time the sun set, he'd run from bush to bush, lighting up the sky with the bugs' glow. It made Ma and I feel so safe, despite everything else. We lost him in early summer, once all the lightning bugs had left for the season.
It's nice that you can still find pieces of him out here.
Yeah. It is.
Sterling looked out to where the lightning bugs twinkled further and further away, until their light began to fade into the distance. It was then that Sterling noticed something. About 20 meters away, barely illuminated by the vanishing bugs, stood a figure, dressed in a green button-up and dusty blue jeans. The tall man stood looking at the fire. The feeling of recognition washed over Sterling as they looked at what remained of their father. The two gazed into each other's eyes for a moment. After a little while, the lightning bugs fully disappeared into the endless sky. Sterling strained their vision, attempting to see their father for just a little longer. But as the darkness once again took over the desert, Robert disappeared for good. This was Mar Smith as Tobin, Mikayla Grubbs as Etta, Logyn Clair as Sterling, and Luana McTiernan as our narrator, with Jovan Jeffs and Kyle J. Nelson as the recording text. This episode was written and directed by Mar Smith and Mikayla Grubbs. Additional voices, contributors, and audio sources can be found in the episode description. This has been The Westward Eye. If you're a fan of what we're making here, please leave a review, share an episode with a loved one, and engage with our social media. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at The Westward Eye. Thank you for listening.